from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Our telephone number, if you want to join us on our late night town hall conversation, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 8334-VALDEZ. Looking forward to speaking with you. And we're going to talk about a few different things, right? One of the things that's on there is... there's a lot. Well, let me try and slow down because I'm excited here, right? There's, first of all, the news about the murderer, right, or the alleged murderer of Laken Riley has officially been charged with murder. Now, this is a big deal because this guy was recently let go, right, as they were trying to figure things out, and finally the charge has been brought. This, I think, is a good thing. But, man, what it takes to get people to do the right thing lately is shocking. And I'm not that old, right? I just turned 46. So I wonder, how did we get here? And of course, everything is a slow fade, right? It's a slow fade. We didn't just wake up one day and fall off the left coast where people don't care about right and wrong, don't care about America, don't care about patriotism, don't care about children, don't care about anything that was once good and holy, right? It just seems we do whatever we want. How did we get here? Well, I mean, obviously it's a slow fade. It was a process that didn't happen overnight. But, man, it really is, I don't want to say surprising, but really is disheartening. Now, the good news is, with all of this going away, there are people that are waking up and looking at things and saying, hold on, I don't like this guy. I don't like that. I don't like Republicans. I don't like Trump. I don't like whatever. But this is no good. And we've seen that recently with, Democrat union guys in New York endorsing Trump and Hispanic men, black men, people who are typically not your average Republican voter that are saying, look, we need things to improve. And I think that's very important. Very, very important. But I think it's because of the vast ineptitude, and I think that's being generous, that comes from the White House. And I don't think there's another way to put it any nicer. Now, let me request from the control room a clip of Erin Burnett and Joe Biden, if we have it. He was on CNN, and he did an interview, and I want to give it to you somewhat uninterrupted so that you have the full context of it. But Joe Biden sits there as she really gives it to him. And then he comes back and he's almost like, I don't know, begging, right? What about this? And, well, you listen to this. Check this out.
When you talk about the economy, of course, it is by far the most important issue for voters. It's also true right now, Mr. President, that voters by a wide margin trust Trump more on the economy. They say that in polls. And part of the reason for that may be the numbers. And you're aware of many of these, of course. The cost of buying a home in the United States is double what it was when you look at your monthly costs from before the pandemic. Real income, when you account for inflation, is actually down since you took office. Economic growth last week, far short of expectations. Consumer confidence, maybe no surprise, is near a 2-year low. With less than 6 months to go to Election Day, are you worried that you're running out of time to turn that around?
We've already turned it around. Look at the Michigan survey. For 65% of American people think they're in good shape economically. They think the nation's not in good shape, but they're personally in good shape. The polling data has been wrong all along. How many, you guys do a poll at CNN, how many folks you have to call to get one response? The idea that we're in a situation where things are so bad, the folks, we've created more jobs. We're in a situation where people have access to good paying jobs. And the last I saw, the the combination of the inflation, the cost of inflation, all those things, that's really worrisome to people with good reason. That's why I'm working very hard to bring the cost of rentals down, to increase the number of homes that are available. But let me say it this way. When I started this administration, people were saying there's going to be a collapse of the economy. We have the strongest economy in the world. Let me say it again, in the world.
Although GDP last week was far short of expectations.
Oh, it wasn't. Look, GDP is still growing. Look at the response of the markets. Overwhelmingly positive. Overwhelmingly positive. And one of the reasons why people feel good about it not being as strong as it was before is they believe that the Fed's going to respond.
They hope they're going to get a rate cut.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, no president's had the run we've had in terms of creating jobs and bringing down inflation. It was 9% when I came to office. 9%. But look, people have a right to be concerned. Ordinary people, the idea that you bounce a check and you get a $30 fee for bouncing the check, might change that. You can't charge more than $8 for that. Or your credit card, your late payment, $35. I mean, there's corporate greed going on out there, and it's got to be dealt with.
So hold on a second. Let me get this straight. For years and years and years, I think the entirety of my adult life, maybe it used to be $30 and now it's $35 if you bounced the check or overdrew your account or something like that. That might be the difference that went up. But that was always that. And we didn't have inflation during those times. And everybody made money and lived life well, even though they had this $35 fee. But now that it's $8, corporate greed has been fixed. And listen, folks, no president has had the run we've had. That's what he said, right? No president's had the run we've had bringing down inflation. Thank God we haven't had another president have the run that he's had with inflation. Good Lord. We'd be in even worse shape if we had other presidents going through the same thing. I don't think we can endure much of this. I don't think we can do this twice. Listen, Joe Biden really, I get it. He was trying to be a retail politician and do what politicians do and spin this thing. But the reality is he's screwing the pooch here, right? He's messing this thing up. And he's messing it up so badly that people realize it. People realize it, and they're not happy. And this is a golden opportunity for Americans to really not presume that Trump is going to win this thing, but to take advantage of probably the weakest commander-in-chief, the weakest president that I've seen in my lifetime. I don't remember Carter. I think Carter might have been gone before I was born, or it was right around the time I was born that I can't remember that. But let me tell you, I think Biden is as bad as it gets. And this is a lesson for all of us, right? We have to strike while the iron is hot. I don't think we're going to get two shots at this. This is a golden opportunity for people everywhere to say, you know what? Our neighbors don't even like each other, but we agree Biden's not the guy, right? Democrats hate Republicans, but they agree Biden's not the guy. The progressive left and the conservatives don't agree, but they do agree, and they both know that Biden is not the guy. So I think it's super important that we don't lose this opportunity. We harness everything that we can harness, grab the energy, grab the momentum, run with this as far as we can, because an opportunity like this, where you have a president who thinks he's doing fantastic and he really hasn't, I think that doesn't come. It's like lightning. It doesn't strike twice in the same place. Folks, stick around. We're going to talk about Fahmi Willis and what she's done, as well as a bunch of other legal topics. And we're going to get into a bunch of other stuff. Lots to discuss tonight. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Georgia Court of Appeals has granted
the defense's application for an appeal after, you remember back, let's go back to Georgia. That's Fahmi Willis and Nathan Wade. Remember them? Okay. And she has said that they did absolutely nothing wrong. Trump's side is saying, we want an appeal, and the Judge McAfee had ruled that the special prosecutor, Nathan Wade, resigned from the Trump election interference case in Georgia. Originally, the judge had given the Fulton County DA's office a choice between having Willis remove herself or having Wade resign. And obviously, Willis didn't remove herself from the case. So that means, going forward, the court is going to hear defense arguments on why they think Fahmi Willis should have been removed from the case.
All right, you heard the report there. That's from Fox News, that the district attorney from Fulton County, Georgia, that brought the RICO case against former President Trump, I call her Fahmi Willis, is in a little bit of jeopardy here, and she may be disqualified. They're willing to hear the defense's arguments as to why she should be disqualified. Again, Fahmi Willis may be out the door. I want to get reaction to this and really get walked through it, because I'm not really up to speed on that, with somebody who's a pro at this stuff, constitutional law attorney, candidate for Senate in Virginia as well. Jonathan Emord is somebody that served in Reagan's administration as an attorney with the FCC, and he's with us this evening. Jonathan Emord, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you.
So let's talk about this Fahmi Willis stuff, because I feel like, the knee-jerk reaction, the political observer in me sees this and says, oh, this lady's out of her mind. She should be bounced out of there on her head. But that's not necessarily the case, right? There has to be due process for her, the way any one of us would have due process, I would presume, even though she's a prosecutor. What does this process look like, and what is the severity of oral arguments being presented by Trump's legal team?
So this is on appeal to the Georgia appellate courts from this trial court, and there's a very serious problem here. It's a conflict of interest. You have to have this special prosecutor, the gentleman named Nathan Wade. He was supposed to be independent, and yet you have this sexual relationship ongoing between Fahmi Willis and Wade, and it colors the entire issue as to whether or not he's independent. And then when she terminates him in the course of the case and leaves herself as the prosecutor, it doesn't eliminate the problem of the conflict of interest. And quite frankly, I think the better argument is with the Trump team. I think the judge got it wrong. And I think in order to uphold the rule of law here, they ought to, on appeal, reverse. So, but to your point about Fahmi Willis, I mean, she did have a trial on the merits with regard to this issue, and she even testified in the trial. And so the record is complete. I just think that the judge got it wrong. You disqualify both of them. You don't allow her the option of removing him and keeping herself in place. They're both tainted by the conflict of interest, and so both should be eliminated from the case.
That makes sense to me, Jonathan Emord, but I feel like so many judges today, Chief Justice Roberts among them, always want to take this King Solomon approach of splitting the baby and trying to appease everybody so that they don't appear political, where they're, in effect, I think, being political. Do you think that's what this Judge McAfee was trying to do here?
Yes, I think oftentimes trial judges are so close to the prosecution and deal with them every day that it becomes a bit of a personal issue for them. Justice should triumph over these personal predilections, but here you have a judge who's actually standing for election, and this whole issue is one that can create considerable animus. So ironically, I mean, even in this instance, the judge, too, may rightfully be said to suffer from a lack of independence in his exercise of judgment simply because he is a candidate at the same time this is going on. So that's a real problem.
Wow. So now, I served in government in the administration of a governor in New Jersey, Governor Chris Christie, and I can tell you that, when I got there, they made it really clear, and they said, listen, when you're appointed to the administration, there's a lot of things you can't do. And it's not just being inappropriate. It's even the appearance of any type of impropriety that would land you in hot water. And they made very specific examples. They said you can accept a cup of coffee for free if it's from Dunkin' Donuts, because most of those cups of coffee are less than $5. But you cannot accept a cup of coffee if it comes from a gourmet place or even Starbucks, because some of those cups of coffee go for $6 or $7. And $5 was the minimum of any gift that we could accept, a perceived value of any type of gift. And so I'm saying it was that close. And I'm thinking I was, a very sub-cabinet person in this administration. I was not a huge deal. But this woman is the district attorney of a large county in Georgia. How is it that, are the rules stricter in New Jersey? Did she turn a blind eye? What do you suppose happened for this to happen and everybody to kind of just play fast and loose with the rules?
Well, I think this is a prosecution that on its face never should have been brought. And so you've got this animus against Donald Trump that seems to be fueling all four of these cases. This is no exception. There really is no foundation for the idea that somehow there's a criminal RICO matter here, that Donald Trump engaged in some nefarious activity simply by calling into question an election. Remember, the Democrats did this in spades and earlier in our history, not too far ago. But when it comes to Donald Trump, when he calls upon people and asks them to justify election results, somehow that's interference with the election and interference with their functioning in their offices. That's absurd. These are elected officials. They're required to be accountable. And here you have legitimate questions with regard to the election, and the president's pressing those points. That's his right. He has a right and indeed a duty. As President of the United States, he must take care that the laws are faithfully executed. And if there is election interference, he needs to understand the full extent of it, particularly when it pertains to a presidential election. Those laws that affect the election of a federal candidate can appropriately be scrutinized under federal law, particularly if there is evidence of sort of a conspiracy that's nationwide to prevent a president from being elected. So he rightfully raised these questions. Now, it's one thing to raise a question. Even if he were in error, it is still his right to raise the question. He didn't take any action that interfered with their conduct of their office. They retain the power to investigate or not and to deal with those inquiries as they wish. And so this is an absurd case, and it really speaks volumes. This woman had a tremendous bias against Fani Willis, had a tremendous bias against President Trump, as is evident from her statements prior to the initiation of the case and during the case itself. So there's a lot going on here that is strange, and in an ordinary situation, I suspect that this entire matter would have been dismissed. But because of the political animus, this is, a weaponization of justice against the former president.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of funny business here with Fahmi Willis. And I'm not a former Reagan lawyer like you are, running for the Senate in Virginia and winning more cases against the FDA than any other American attorney in history. But I can tell you, I think it's pretty crazy to bring a RICO case against a politician, A, and B, and then to lock up his lawyer, too, when they lock up Rudy Giuliani and the rest of them. I think the whole thing is just beyond the pale, and I can't imagine how this case moves forward. Jonathan Emord, stick with me. I want to get into more of your background, your campaign, and what's going on with immigration from the legal perspective when we return. Folks, we're on with Jonathan Emord. He's a candidate for the United States Senate in Virginia. He's a constitutional lawyer, and he's our guest, and we're coming right back. If you have a question, give a call. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue our conversation with Jonathan Emord. He's running for the United States Senate in Virginia, and we're going to get into his campaign in a moment. He's a constitutional attorney, and I want to get his opinion on something, because recently we heard that the individual, Jose Ibarra, who was charged with the murder of Lake and Riley, was released because of X, Y, and Z. Well, today we found out that he's finally being charged with murder, and I'm hoping to get an understanding of what's going on there so that you all can be crystal clear on this as well. I think it's a win for justice, but listen to the report.
This new information stemming from events on Tuesday when the Georgia grand jury indicted Jose Ibarra on a total of 10 counts in the death of Lake and Riley. Now, those documents just made public this morning. There are 3 more charges than what was initially filed. Those new charges include aggravated assault with attempt to rape, tampering with evidence, and peeping Tom. The tampering with evidence charge accuses him of hiding a jacket and gloves to attempt to keep him from getting caught. It was also revealed that just hours before Ibarra was accused of killing the 22-year-old nursing student, he went to the University Village apartments and spied on a woman through her window. The documents charge Ibarra with asphyxiating Riley along with inflicting blunt force trauma on her head.
That is a report from Fox, and it's so disheartening to hear it, but I can say I'm hopeful and I'm grateful that they're bringing these charges, and it sounds like, it's a pretty open and shut case, I hope. Jonathan Emord, what say you?
I agree with you. I think that this is justice as it's supposed to work. I don't understand why we cannot keep people of this sort incarcerated and why they can't process these matters in a more rapid fashion. And this whole movement to, get rid of cash bail is an utter disaster of that sort. But this looks good. This is proceeding along the way it's supposed to. He will have his day in court, and I do believe the evidence is overwhelming, so I would fully expect a conviction. But these days, it's so frustrating because we have these anti-incarceration prosecutors, Soros-backed prosecutors, who are really violating their oaths of office and threatening the American public greatly because they allow criminals to remain on the streets and refuse to prosecute various things like sex crimes. Here in Loudoun County, Virginia, in Fairfax County, Virginia, Steve Descano, a Soros-backed prosecutor, a Commonwealth's attorney, has not prosecuted a single sex trafficking case in his entire term because he apparently thinks that that's the appropriate thing to do. How you can be that sick, I don't know, but he's not prosecuting a single case despite numerous arrests. And they're on the street, and sex trafficking is now reaching epidemic proportions here. And we have these illegal aliens coming across. They profit, the gangs do, profit enormously from sex trafficking, even more so than drug trafficking. And our nation is inundated with this horrible situation, which is ruinous to these young girls. And we're doing an inadequate job of arresting, prosecuting, kicking these people out, and variously punishing them for what are unspeakable crimes. And this is just one example.
Well, today we see a bill. Let me just make sure I get it right here. The House passed a bill to exclude illegal immigrants from the census. Right, that's got to make its way to the census, and to the Senate in order for it to be off of the census. But we don't have a lot of leadership in the Senate, and this is something that you're hoping to bring to the United States Senate. Tell us about your campaign and why you're challenging Tim Kaine.
Well, Tim Kaine is really votes about 94% of the time with Bernie Sanders. He really is backing this whole destruction of our country, which is the open border agenda he backs, the transitioning of children in school, which is the most grossest form of child abuse, and this whole critical race theory nonsense, which is just Marxism, cultural Marxism. And also the climate change agenda, which is destroying the fossil fuel backbone of the American economy. So I'm very strongly supportive of measures to reverse all of this, including the massive amount of inflationary spending that comes with this ridiculous climate change agenda, about $1 trillion plus a year, and get back to an environment in which our borders are secure. Our economy is thriving based on a massive reduction in government regulation, reduction in taxation, and reduction in government interference with our lives. This is something I've fought against my whole career. as a lawyer against the deep state, against the administrative agencies, and I've had the good fortune of defeating the agencies over and over and over again on constitutional grounds in the courts. But it's still not enough, and so that's why I'm running. I want to save this country. I want to see the Trump agenda fully implemented, and I want to make sure that our borders are secure, our kids are safe in school, and our economy is booming again. We can have all of that, but we have to get people like Tim Kaine out of there. He's a Soros-backed candidate. He's been taking money from Soros all the way back 23 years ago, and he was one of the first in the nation to receive money from George Soros, $50,000 when he ran for mayor of Richmond, or local race. Wow. These people have sold out our country. They're corrupt career politicians, and we have to, as citizens, we have to rise up and take our country back, or we're going to lose it.
Folks, we're on with Jonathan Emord. He's a constitutional lawyer and a candidate for the United States Senate in Virginia. And if you want to help him out, let him know real quick, where do they go to give you some money and help your campaign?
Well, that'd be great. Thank you for that. It's emord4va.com, and there you can go to the donate link. And yes, please do donate. Remember, we're going up against Hillary Clinton's vice presidential running mate, Tim Kaine. He has upwards of $13 million in the bank, and he's probably going to get upwards of $60 million. This is going to be one of the most costly races in the country, and our intention is to attack him relentlessly and vigorously, make him account to the people of Virginia and the nation for the abysmal record that he has. Everything from backing the ignominious retreat from Afghanistan to keeping the borders open. Tim Kaine is right there with Joe Biden in lockstep with a party that really has abandoned the best interests of our country, and I believe is engaged in a planned destruction of the United States to usher in a totalitarian regime. I think it's just inevitable unless we reverse the course that we're on.
Now, Jonathan Emord, for folks who don't know that you served in the Reagan administration as a lawyer for the FCC and have taken on the FDA and won more cases than any other lawyer in American history. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, so I came into Washington at the Federal Communications Commission during the Reagan years. When I was asked initially about my interest in coming to work for the FCC, I said, well, I don't think I should work there because I don't think the FCC should exist. And they laughed. And it's a different era, right? So they said, hey, look, why don't you come on out, because that's the way we think, too. We're in the era of deregulation, Jonathan. We could appreciate the help. So then when I left the FCC, I went into private practice, and I've been suing the government on behalf of individuals whose rights have been violated. And my good fortune, praise the Lord, has been that I've had victories over and over again, and I have an intimate understanding of this wretched thing they call the deep state and the administrative state, and I've written several bills, including bills for Ron Paul, one of which was signed into law by President Trump ultimately because his son Rand Paul introduced a version of it that he signed. That's the Access to Medical Treatment Act, later called the Right to Try Act, which would allow you to get access to an experimental drug if you're terminally ill without begging the FDA for allowance. So it eliminated that requirement, and all you have to do now is have fully informed consent. You can gain access when you're dying. You need help, and the government was standing in the way. They actually killed a boy I represented, Zachary McConnell, had a glioblastoma, and the FDA would not allow him to continue in a clinical trial that reduced the size of the tumor in his head by 1/3, saving his life for an incurable tumor. He was on a drug called antineoplastins in Texas. The FDA ordered him off the trial because they said he didn't meet the FDA-approved protocol requirements. So that ultimately led to his death, even though he got the decision reversed with the help of Congressman Dan Burton in the House. So then was the head of the House Government Reform and Oversight Committee. But it took 30 days to do it. And during that time, that aggressive tumor grew in his brain and completely enveloped it, so that when he got back on the treatment, there was insufficient time, and he died. So they killed him, and I vowed then to fight vigorously for this bill. And I'm happy to say that President Donald Trump urged passage of it in his State of the Union address, and then forced the Congress through his strength of willpower and commitment to this issue to see that it was done. 4 other presidents were asked to do the same thing. None would balk. None would stand up against the drug industry. And so Donald Trump is not beholden to anybody, and he made sure it passed. So as a result, we've got thousands of people in this country who are alive or at least getting the treatment they want, and it's their lives after all, and they should be able to get access to an experimental drug for the disease they have. So that's sort of it. I've also defeated the FDA on censorship grounds where they've censored health information, not least of which was the folic acid neural tube defect claim. And that one, we just wanted to tell women of childbearing age that if they consumed 800 micrograms of folic acid a day before they became pregnant, that would reduce their risk of a neural tube defect birth, that's spina bifida anencephaly, by 80%. And some 2,500 women a year suffered neural tube defect births, and countless abortions were related to that problem. And we beat the FDA on that, changed the nature of the law governing speech at the FDA, and the information got into the market, and lo and behold, the incidence of neural tube defect births dropped dramatically, and the incidence of NTD-related abortions went way down. The March of Dimes disappeared, and we have tens of thousands of babies now born healthy every year as a result of that litigation. So there have been a lot of good things. Those are some of them. And really, fighting for our rights has been my quest my whole career. I want to do it in the United States Senate. I want to save this country. I want to make sure that we live in a free nation and have the Constitution upheld rather than violated with impunity like happens right now with this president and this Congress, the Senate. So we've got a lot of work to do, but we can save this nation. It's not too late, but it's getting close.
Jonathan Emord, it's a lot to be proud of. Folks, Emord for VA is the website, EMORDFORVA, as in Virginia, Emord for Virginia, VA.com. Godspeed to you, sir. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I appreciate you staying up late with us, and I hope you'll come back and check in with us as the campaign continues.
My pleasure. I'd be honored.
Thank you, sir. Folks, don't go anywhere. There's more to come straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. With Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
It's estimated that every day in British Columbia, at least an average of 6 people are dying because of unregulated drugs. To help reduce overdose deaths, BC launched a 3-year pilot project just over a year ago to decriminalize the possession of a small amount of certain illicit drugs. Now, due to safety concerns from the police and public, the BC government officially asked Ottawa and Health Canada about 2 weeks ago to revoke the exemption and make illicit drugs illegal once again in public places. Today, the federal government approved the province's request and said this decision doesn't represent a failure of the pilot project.
We would adjust and analyze as we move forward. This is the first time this has been done. As in any pilot, it is a process of learning, taking that learning and adjusting and making sure that we move forward so that we're saving lives.
So far in 2024, 572 people in British Columbia have died due to unregulated drugs. 15% of those deaths occurred outside in streets, sidewalks, and parks.
So that is a report from the Canadian News on what's happening in Canada. Now, similar is happening not far from there in Washington State. Oregon also has had this problem where they decriminalized the use of public drug use, where people would go and start shooting up their drugs and get high. And we've seen it happen in other places where you help people to commit crime, they're going to commit crime. Philadelphia, for example, South Jersey, Camden, right? There they didn't decriminalize it. What they did was they said, we're going to give you clean needles because we don't want you, if you're going to get high, you might as well use a clean needle, right? And there was all these crazy ideas that we have to help people with clean needles because, getting high is bad enough. We don't want them spreading disease on top of that. Come on. Right? The whole thing is just crazy to me. When you help people do bad things, they're going to do more of it. That's the bottom line. And I can't believe that those in government don't know that. So now you have the province of British Columbia up in Canada, and they very quickly reversed course on this experiment that they had where they decriminalized the possession of certain illicit drugs in public and using them, right? Saying that there's been mounting frustration and quote-unquote disorder in the Canadian province. Now, this is the premier of British Columbia. His name is David Eby. He said on Friday that he had asked the federal government, Justin Trudeau's government, to reintroduce a ban on public drug use, though personal possession and consumption will still be allowed in private spaces. Again, if you let people do bad things, they're going to do them. Keeping people safe is our highest priority, he says. While we're caring and compassionate for those struggling with addiction, we do not accept street disorder that makes communities feel unsafe. Yeah, I mean, I can't believe somebody even has to say that, right? I mean, the mere idea that you're going to allow this to happen in public means when you're walking down the street. Now, I don't know about all of you listening, right? I really don't know. I don't know everybody's story. Some people never marry. Some people never have children. I did that. I got married and I had children. I had a little girl, and then I had another one 4 years later. 2 little girls. And they're little. They were very little. And I would walk around with my 2 little girls with pigtails, and they were small girls. And the last thing, and I'm not a small guy. I'm not that tall, but I'm pretty stocky, 200 and something pounds. I can hold my own. But the last thing I want to do is walk by somebody who's shooting up a drug in public at a park when I'm there with my little girls. Now, they're big now today, thank God. But I don't want them as young women like Lake and Riley, right? She's 22 years old, 23. That's what my daughter is. My daughter, Jada. So all I could say is this stuff with Canada, absolute insanity. Anyway, I'm going to get to your calls right now. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. So just imagine that you're walking down the street, you go into the park with your little girls, and you see some dude there who's probably got his pants around his ankles because he's squatting and dropping a deuce in the middle of the park. And then he's about to shoot up with a syringe because that's what he does. And this is a commonplace occurrence, a very commonplace occurrence in Oregon, in Washington, in Philadelphia, and I'm guessing in a lot of other places where they encourage this type of behavior. And I want to get your thoughts on this. Let's go to Burlington, Vermont, WVMT, and check in with Ralph. Ralph, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Hey, Captain Valdez. I started with your screen caller with the northern border, but we're going to go to the fact that they're going to try to put in a safe injection site with medical personnel so you can do your drugs in a safe space.
With a doctor.
In the meantime.
Oh, boy.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, that's crazy. You could do your drugs in a safe place in the middle of the park, and if you get sick, we'll have medical personnel to help you out and coddle you a little bit more. I mean, it's almost like, hey, if you haven't tried drugs ever, this is the safest place to do it. Ralph, I hate to cut you off, but the music means we've got to go. We're coming right back with hour number 2. Thanks for your call. WVMT in the building, and you're right. It's absolutely crazy to create these safe spaces to do drugs. Do them in an abandoned building like everybody else and have a bad story, and hopefully you'll stop. I'm Rich Valdez, coming back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 2 of our program. And if you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4Valdez. And there's a bunch of news out there. Georgia, the Court of Appeals in the state of Georgia has decided to hear the Trump legal team's case to disqualify the corrupt DA, Fani Willis. So kudos to them for even listening to those arguments, because I think they'll be persuaded in the right direction if they, if they maintain an open mind. And something we talked about a little earlier, the alleged Laken Riley murderer has been officially charged with murder. And something that I didn't know, I wasn't sure how that whole thing went down. Honestly, it was bad enough. But one of the counts that they've brought was attacking her or hurting her with the intent of raping her. And that was something I didn't know. I thought he just gotten into a fight with this girl and, attacked her. I had no idea that it was also an attempted a sexual assault, which I think is just absolutely horrible. So that's another item on there. And something else I want to talk about, I just had it open here, I wanted to share it with you, is the this thing called debanking. And I hadn't heard of it, but I read about it. And it's when, people or organizations, they start closing their bank accounts. And for the first time ever, I felt like debanking this weekend. I actually like using a debit card. I like not having to carry cash on me. There's a degree of convenience, I think, that goes with it. However, these modern conveniences are sometimes, inconveniences. And such happened to me this weekend. Of course, it was my birthday weekend, and I was doing a bunch of different things. And I made an impulse purchase of something that wasn't really that expensive, but I guess my bank has changed the amount of money that I could spend every day on my debit card. And there's a section on my app that says, to lower the amount of, you could set your own threshold, but it wasn't working. So I guess the bank set their own threshold for me. And I don't even spend a lot of money. I really don't. But I decided to buy something for myself, and no problem. And then I went to go buy something else, and they were like, oh, it doesn't work. And this has happened to me before, but it's usually a fraud feature. And I get a text that says, hey, are you actually making this purchase? When I was in Budapest, similar happened to me. And they said, are you really doing this? And you type back yes, and then it's cleared up. Back in the days, it used to be you had to call somebody and talk to them. So because of my nature as a small business person originally, I like to support small businesses. So I go to a small bank that's 100-something years old that my dad banked at for, close to 30 years. And I bank there. But their customer service, their 800 numbers, not 24 hours like some of the other big banks. It ends at 5 o'clock. And it opens again the next day at 9. So when you get jammed up over the weekend, guess what? You got to wait till Monday to talk to these people. And I was so burnt up about this. I remember in the moment I was saying, I'm not going back to this little tiny rinky-dink bank, this clown show, this fly-by-night operation. I'm going with the biggest bank I could find where I can pick up my phone and call and speak with somebody. Even if they're in Indonesia, I could say, hey, look, I have money in the bank. I want to be able to make a debit card purchase, to not have to use a credit card, whatever. Anyway, bottom line was I was angry in the moment. I didn't do anything. But that was my story. And it made me think, what is going on with debanking, and why are other people debanking? And was I about to join this trend? So I want to get into that a little bit, as well as, how strong is the U.S. dollar? Are we ever going to get back to a asset-backed currency like a dollar that's backed by gold or attached to a gold standard? And to do that, I want to talk to the CEO of a bank It's called Old Glory Bank. He's co-founder and CEO of Old Glory Bank. And he's got a number of other co-founders that I think you may have heard of, and I'll let him tell you a little bit about that story and how the bank came about. But he's going to tell us about how Old Glory Bank is fighting back against debanking, this trend that's currently taking the nation. And I want to get his thoughts on everything else. I want you to help me welcome Mike Ring, co-founder and CEO of Old Glory Bank. Mike Ring, welcome.
Thank you, Rich. Love the show and happy birthday. In fact, we're fellow Taurus.
Oh, how cool. Happy birthday to you too, sir. That's cool. Don't go making big purchases on the weekend.
Yeah. Are you able to disclose what you were purchasing that was so big, or is it something
it wasn't so big. It was just they lowered. I used to have a $5,000 limit, and I guess they lowered it to $2,500, and I bought some jewelry, and it was not $5,000. It was, half of that. And they were like, you can't do it. And I couldn't call anybody to complain. And I was really upset about that. I really was. That doesn't happen to me very regularly. And I just thought, that's very unfair. This is my money. And that was really what it was. I was like, this is my money. What's going on here? I was really up in arms about it. So, I feel better now. I just had to wait till like past midnight, and I was back in action. And I had some cash on hand and credit cards or whatever. But it was just the principle of it. I was just like, I don't like the idea that some arbitrary rule that you've changed, because I remember that being 5,000. They said, if you need to make it bigger, we can make it bigger. And I was like, no, why on earth would I spend $5,000 in a day? I didn't want to spend money. But it was just crazy to me that that's a thing. And I know that some banks, to prevent a run, they will do that without telling you. And I guess that's part of what, my angst was. And I was like, what's going on here? What's really behind this?
Yeah, if I had to guess, it was probably fraud. The amount of fraud that we fight, every bank fights, it is a daily grind. And so I think in your case, it probably was. In good faith, and that frequently is not the case, and we have lots of examples where people are legitimately debanked. I think your situation is you have not been using your card, and it was such a disproportionate large purchase that They probably just frauded it. But yet, as you said, there was no number you could call, where if you were banking with Old Glory Bank, Monday through Saturday, 8 to 8, someone picks up the phone, and they're not in Bangladesh, they're not in the Philippines. love those countries. They are in Durant, Oklahoma. Middle America people pick up the phone from our Middle America customers.
Well, I love that. Now, Mike Ring, I want you to tell us a little bit about how did Old Glory Bank become a thing? I love the name, by the way. How did it become a thing, and how did you find these cool co-founders?
Yeah, thank you for letting me tell the story. We haven't been at this long. We just turned the lights on, so to say, about a year ago in April of 2023. But the way we put this together is I'm a lawyer by training. I think a lot of disruptors in various industries come from outside the industry when they want to disrupt something. You think about Herb Keller at Southwest, or Fred Smith at FedEx, or Elon Musk was certainly not a car guy when he started it. Many people said, why, Mike, are you involved in a bank as a lawyer? And the answer was, if it wasn't this group, who was going to create that bank for Middle America, who would not cancel you for what you believe? And so thankfully, through some relationships I had, got in front of our great co-founders, John Rich. Everyone knows and loves him.
Country superstar, John Rich.
Yeah, and in one of the most, properly advocate for America, and so well spoken about the issues of anyone out there. And he is just such a joy to be partners with. Secretary Ben Carson, legitimately one of the smartest people on the planet. Larry Elder, legitimately one. Yep, Larry Elder, a fellow comrade of yours on the radio for many years.
Absolutely.
Ran for president, ran for governor. It's the hardest working man in banking. And because of the bank we bought, which is a one branch bank in Elmore City, Oklahoma, but because of our great online technology, we now have customers in all 50 states. We also have the former two-term governor, Mary Fallon, just a wonderful, smart lady. And so this group came together, and then with a bunch of, we've got 70 brilliant technology and banking people behind the scenes. And our mission was simple: have a pro-America, FDIC-insured bank, but with the great technology, you don't really need to walk into your branch anymore. And you can have your bank in your pocket. And thankfully, in our first year of operations, we've added 45,000 customers across all 50 states. And we grew from $12 million in customer deposits to now we're over 120. So I think we've just had phenomenal success. And as important as our mission is, and as important as the fact that we value your values and we won't cancel you for what you believe or what you say, our products and service are as equally important. And I would challenge anyone out there to use our app and tell me if it's not the best solution out there of any bank. So when you have a bank that values your values and it's the best product and customer service, it seems to be a winner, and thankfully it's working out with our hard-working team.
Folks, we're on with Mike Ring. He's the CEO and co-founder of Old Glory Bank, and a bunch of conservative patriots got together and opened a bank. I love this story, honestly. This is how you change things in life. This is how you change America, and you give people options. And I love it. If I'm able to open, I have a small business. If I'm able to bring my small business account to you guys, I totally will. I don't do huge numbers, but it is what it is. If I can do it with you, I want to do it with you because I think that's what we have to do. When we come back, I want to get your insight on a couple of different topics in the banking business and in the banking world. Don't go anywhere, folks. We're coming right back with Mike Ring.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
My hands across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back, amigos. We continue our conversation. And as I was saying, I over the weekend, it was my birthday. I was celebrating. My brothers are constantly on top of me to make sure I keep my options diversified. They're always telling me, you got to get physical gold. You got to get physical gold. And I always joke with them and say, yeah, maybe I'm going to go buy a gold watch, or I'm going to go buy a gold chain. And I actually did. I went and got a gold chain. I know it's not the same as buying some gold bullion, obviously. But I went to Matthias the jeweler. It's a very popular jeweler. He deals with a lot of rappers, believe it or not. And I didn't get a big gold chain like the rappers do. But I did get a really nice handmade, handcrafted cross, because it was Orthodox Easter. And although I'm not Orthodox, it was Cinco de Mayo also. It was a really beautiful piece with some diamonds in it, and that's what I wanted to get for myself for my birthday. And I bought it, and I want to give a shout out to them because they did a great job. And that's what I did. And it made me think. And the first thing he said when I was asking him the price on it, he was like, well, the price of gold just went up. And it made me think, man, why don't we have our U.S. dollar attached to the gold standard or to any type of asset that backs our dollar? And obviously, in my entire lifetime, we have had a fiat currency. And I get it, and I see how we're able to make it work. But I know that there's a lot of angst. There's a lot of people out there that want to make that move. And I'm hoping Mike Ring could help me understand if he thinks it's ever going to happen. Mike Ring.
Yeah, unfortunately, I believe that ship has sailed and it's not coming back. If you think about what year were you born, Rich?
78.
Okay. So I was born in 65. Now. Yeah, I was born in 65. So in 71, as folks recall, it's when Nixon, I think the story is he disappeared for 3 days up to Camp David with some great advisors and experts and decided to decouple the U.S. currency from gold. And while certainly a case could be made that because of that, it allows the Federal Reserve to inflate or deflate the currency and not have it kept kind of equilibrium. The problem is there's not enough. There's no single asset that could back the currency today. So if you think about today, our economy is $28 trillion a year. People in the latest studies, I think they say the M2 value of money, the amount of money out there is $20 trillion. I think even at $2,300 an ounce of gold, I think that's what we're up to now. Estimates say there's only $13.7 trillion of gold that's available, and there's more to be mined, but just the cost of bringing it up. So I think the reality is what happened and what Nixon realized is that we were in an inflationary period, and if people started exchanging their dollars for gold, there would not have actually been enough gold to exchange, and we would have had there'd be a worldwide crash. And so I actually, while I hate what has happened to our currency, I think that's the symptom. The problem is our debt. Just as recently as when Clinton was leaving office, our debt to GDP was 37%. This year, it's going to be 129%, and it's just not sustainable. And that's the problem. It's not that we're not back to gold. We consistently spend more money than our GDP can support.
Right. Spending is a huge problem. And I don't know how to fix that problem. I've been at it for years on the radio. I don't know if we're making a difference or not, but I know that we continue to spend like crazy and it continues to devalue the dollar. At least that's how I see it because of inflation. Now let's talk about that. From your perspective as the CEO of a bank, Mike Ring, do you see the dollar as being strong today or is it weakened? Because I get conflicting reports depending on what I'm reading.
It's a great question. I think the reason why you're getting conflicting reports is because the dollar index, which is what you always see in the newspaper on CNBC, it's made up of 6 currencies. And 11, I'm in Atlanta, so it's 11:30 where I am. But let's see if I can remember what they were. It's the euro, the yen, the pound, the Canadian dollar, the Swedish krona, and the Swiss franc. All of those have actually, versus the dollar, not changed much since before the pandemic. And we always use January 2020 before the pandemic as a standard. But what has really changed is the Japanese yen. The Japanese yen has literally crashed. It's almost to the 1990s level. So if you think before the pandemic, $1 would buy you 108 yen. Now it's 155, and it was as bad as 160 not long ago. And that, I believe, is skewing the dollar index to make it think that the dollar is actually inflated, but actually to almost every other currency, the Canadian dollar, the British pound, the euro, it's not much different than before the pandemic. It's really in my humble view, it's the disproportionate impact of the yen on our dollar.
Now, do you think that there's some people out there very doom and gloom? They think the end of the dollar is near because crypto is somewhat finite, and once they come up with an asset-backed crypto, because it's finite, it doesn't have to match all the rest of the currency in the world, and that will, be a tool that the BRICS nations could use to embrace and then eat our lunch. Do you see that happening?
I do not. I believe that U.S. dollar, and there's $2 to $3 trillion that float at any given time, is still the greatest asset. And people always talk about asset-backed. I think the dollar is the asset-backed because the asset that backs the dollar is the strength of the U.S. economy. And even though, let's say we were talking about earlier, our debt to GDP is 129. Think about where Japan is today. They're at 260%. Wow. And so we still have the greatest economy. And I actually, even though I'm the Bank for America, we are the bank that believes it pushes back against the government. We will never share your data with the government unless it's under, a subpoena, and we lose that fight. And yet I don't believe there is any bona fide risk of everyone else talks about the digital currency. I don't believe that's real for a couple of reasons. One is, and I'm a lawyer by training, I do not believe that either the Federal Reserve or the Treasury Department has the legal authority to take away notes and coins and replace it with the digital currency. It's going to take an act of Congress, and so obviously the House, the Senate, and the President. And so I don't believe the risk is there that the dollar's going away.
All right, Mike Ring, hopefully we've gotten you a few customers. Some people are asking how they can deposit their money. I'm going to tell them to go to your website. Tell them what the website is.
Thank you. OldGloryBank.com. It takes just 8 minutes to open a personal account, and we get a business account open normally in a day. OldGloryBank.com.
All right. Mike Ring, thank you, sir. It's Rich Valdez. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
He's brown, he's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And there's a study that is out there discussing how anger could actually increase the risk of heart disease. Now, I know you've heard over and over throughout life, you've heard people say, no, don't get them mad, you give them a heart attack, or don't scare people, you get them a heart attack, right? That is a colloquialism, I think, in many ways. But I want you to hear a clip from Good Morning America that give some of the details of this study. Check this out.
It's a fascinating study because we've long known that anger has been associated with problems with our heart. But in this study, they were actually to gather participants, almost 300, and they were able to subject them to different emotional experiences. And what they found that anger was most likely associated with the malfunctioning of specific blood cells or epithelial cells. And that's important because that can lead to hardening of the blood vessels over time. And then that can lead to increased risk of heart attacks, strokes, and cardiovascular disease.
Now, I don't even know what an epithelial cell is, right? I'm pretty sure I could spell it if I tried. But somebody that knows what is going on here is Board Certified Invasive Cardiologist Dr. Fahmi Farah. And she's been on with us before and is the director of Global Healthline Foundation. Dr. Farah, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you. Likewise. Good to have you. So let's talk about this. And again, I feel like it's kind of goes without saying that if you're always angry, you're going to pop a gasket. But tell us what is so significant about this new study that shows how anger could, in fact, increase your risk of heart disease.
Yes. We've long known, of course, that anger is not a good thing. And this study just further reiterates that thought that we had already known. And along with anger comes several negative impact on the body, particularly your heart. When we're angry, our body releases several types of stress hormones that can have negative impact. So, at a microscopic level and at a microscopic level. So microscopic, like something you mentioned, like, the endothelium and the epithelium, which are like internal structures of our blood vessels, those can get impacted, they feel that effect and can get damaged. And in the acute setting, of course, we feel our heart racing, so your heart rate will go up, and blood pressure goes up. And those can have serious impact on your cardiovascular health.
That doesn't sound good. This doesn't sound good at all, Doc. Now, what is it that is recommended? Because, I mean, some people, I live in the New York metro area. Anger is a pretty normal thing around here. People are just constantly yelling at each other. What do you recommend? Moving, more exercise? What's the secret here?
Yes, I think, finding out the triggers, what is it that causes you to get angry? So finding out those triggers and avoidance, of course, is the key so that you don't get anger, and just mitigating those things, like just, make sure that you relax and practice some relaxation techniques like doing yoga, taking your mind off. If there are certain triggers that that can create that kind of a scenario, just remove yourself from that place or that person for a little while, gain control of yourself, and then have a conversation. So these are the types of non-medicinal things that you can incorporate in your life to de-stress, relax, and not get angry.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'll take your word for it. I think it's easier said than done. But what's interesting, and again, this is according to the Journal of the American Heart Association, that feeling angry for as little as 8 minutes a day could raise your chances of experiencing a cardiac event. Now, I think that's very significant, Doc, because many people, if you're sitting in traffic and, you're palming your face and you're clenching your steering wheel and you're yelling at every last guy that passes by you, or they're yelling at you, I think that could be well over 8 minutes. And thinking that if you have to go to work and then come back, most people have a commute. I think the average commute is 26 minutes. This sounds like really, really bad news. I'm thinking people need to find a way to relax, especially when they're in the car. No?
I completely agree with you. Relaxation is the key, and it's very significant. As little as 8 minutes can have huge impact on your body. And again, it all goes back to what it does, internally. That high blood pressure, when we're angry, without a doubt, our blood pressure goes up. And high blood pressure is one of the key ingredients to creating or causing cardiovascular disease. Also stroke, stroke is a major problem, and anger can cause that. So I think, people need to find remedies. And for those who are stuck in traffic and getting angry, just like listen to an audiobook or your favorite music. Those outlets are so important to make sure that you're not getting overly angry and excited.
Folks, we're on with Dr. Fahmi Farah, cardiologist, board certified invasive cardiologist. And we're going to continue this discussion on heart health when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. Amigos, we continue our discussion on how anger can kill you. And listen to this number, right? On average, someone dies of cardiovascular disease every 34 seconds. Every 34 seconds, somebody's dropping dead from cardiovascular disease. I didn't know that. I would never even imagine that what the number's like. You're talking about something like 2,000 deaths per day from cardiovascular disease, heart attack or stroke. Our guest is Dr. Fahmi Farah. She is an invasive cardiologist. And Dr. Farah, I want you to tell us a little bit about how this is shaping up, because oftentimes when I do these segments on medical stuff, we're talking about Ozempic or we're talking about obesity and addictions to food. And I know all of that stuff and diabetes and all of that also contributes to cardiovascular disease. So what is the current state of affairs in America as you see it? Are we doing better or worse with cardiovascular disease?
Unfortunately, I do think that we're doing worse when it comes to cardiovascular disease, especially post-pandemic. There's been a surge of, in the field of cardiovascular disease. We're seeing a definite increase in the rate of heart attack, even in the young population. We recently, post-pandemic, there was a study that looked at more than 1 million people, and we saw an increase, as much as 40% increase in the rate of heart attack in the young population between the age group 25 to 43. So for sure, to answer your question, we do see a worsening when it comes to cardiovascular disease.
And that's an alarming thing to talk about. But recently there was some news that came out of a lawsuit regarding AstraZeneca and the COVID vaccine that they released that was causing blood clots, and it was causing a disproportionate amount of deaths and other type of cardiovascular injuries to those that had taken that vaccine. What percentage, based on your understanding of it, of what you're describing is tied to something like that?
It's hard to say. Based on the statistics we've had, I don't think the vaccine itself is responsible for a lot of it. Although there were some cases that were reported, but the vast majority, I think, the virus itself was the culprit.
Right. It causes this, I guess, like a long-term side effect, or that's kind of the mark that it leaves on people, is it ruins the... How does that happen, with something that seems to be primarily respiratory?
Right. So we've known for a very long time that any kind of viral illness can trigger cardiovascular issues. For instance, like the flu season, for example, the flu's been around for a very long time. And the flu, that viral infection can trigger heart attack because it can destabilize an already preformed blockage that's been there for some time, and it can rupture that plaque from the strain of the viral infection, and the rate of heart attack can increase. So we already knew that from other types of virus that we've dealt with in the past. But COVID has accelerated that from our understanding and statistically speaking, not just in the realm of heart attack, but in the entire vascular system in general can be affected by COVID. It can be destabilized, and the endothelium, which are the linings of the vascular, our blood vessels, can be weakened. So COVID, it's still something we're still figuring out. It's fairly new, but from the data we have, it can attack the cardiovascular system for a multitude of different ways.
And, something I find interesting is, and again, I didn't grow up hearing that being fat would kill you. I grew up hearing that eating the wrong thing would kill you, and that being fat was you were big boned or this or that. And here I am, later on in life, I had become overweight. I was 270 pounds at one point, and I finally found a doctor that was honest enough to tell me, he said, "You're going to drop dead." And I was like, "Get out." And he was like, "No, really." And it was a big wake-up call for me, and I've lost those 70 pounds, and I'm just under 200 pounds now, which is not ideal still. He always tells me you need to drop another 20. But I've lost some weight, and I've changed my lifestyle in many ways. But I realized now the impact that this has, and it's all cardiovascular, right? That's ultimately what kills you. It's not anything else but the heart attack or the stroke that gets you from the way you eat, from the way you don't exercise, from so many things that we have in our lifestyle. Do you think that we still have a problem in America, at least, of people being drastically overweight?
Oh, absolutely, we do. It's one of our biggest issues here in America. Like, obesity is a huge issue. It's something we all need to raise awareness with. You raised a very, very good point. You said, the way we phrase it in our communities, in our culture, we're very sensitive, to the topic of obesity. And in my opinion, we shouldn't be. We should be very upfront, just like your doctor did.
Yeah.
That there's, as your physician, it's our duty to be upfront and honest and transparent with you that no, just because you don't have that blockage yet, it doesn't mean you're healthy. If there's obesity in the picture, you are unhealthy by definition, and your mortality rate is higher by definition. So don't let anybody fool you by telling you that, oh, you're obese, it's okay, you're healthy, you're not. So losing that weight is imperative to heart-healthy lifestyle.
Yeah, listen, I'm on board with that one. And I only bring that up because when I'm not on the radio, sometimes I go on TV and I'll debate different current events topics. And one time I was in the green room at a TV station, and my opponent in the segment we were doing was a really nice guy, and he was telling me about how he served on the board of a foundation and gave a speech and opened up with the phrase "fat kills," and he followed up with saying "fat is bad." And he got booed by the organization and everybody there. And I thought, why would that happen? And I had this different understanding because my doctor had, kind of schooled me on it and told me, listen, you're going to drop dead. He told me you're going to have a massive heart attack or stroke by 50 is what he said. And he was very clear, and he wasn't making jokes about it. And I thought, why would you do that? And this guy said, well, they were concerned that there were women in the audience, that they felt I was fat shaming certain people. We didn't want to body shame people. And I thought, body shame? They're going to be dead, is what I was thinking. And it strikes me as crazy. Where is this coming from, Doc?
It's the culture. I think a lot of our, it's the image, like in society, if somebody's obese, they face certain stereotypes, they're not accepted, and they just have a lot of body shaming because we put, like magazines, like social media now, media in general, they tend to promote a certain type of body type, right? Like models. That's what everybody thinks is the ideal body type. And I think that puts a lot of strain and a lot of pressure on people's image, and it's detrimental in many different ways. And this is one prime example that, obesity is not something that people should be, it's not a body shaming a thing. It's something far beyond that. It's not about the image. It's about your health. And as you said very plainly, and I like that you're going to drop dead. So it's not something that at all should be on a social spectrum. Like, it's not at all that should be labeled as stereotype of any kind. It's one fact and one fact only, and that is your health. That obesity means there's some amount of unhealthiness that you can improve, and you can have a much healthier lifestyle. The quality of life will improve, and certainly it has a survival benefit.
Sure. And you know, Doc, I think you're very kind, and you're being very generous in your response. But I would say, I think the approach, I'd had several doctors in my adult life, and it wasn't until I got this one that literally told me the way he did. And that was something that worked for me. But I can tell you, I think there's a lot of people out there that still say the stuff that I heard when I was a kid. Oh, they're just really thick, or they're just big boned. And not realizing this really thick thing is going to cut 20 or 30 years off of your life. This really big bone thing is going to be a guaranteed trip to pre-diabetes or diabetes in your 40s and 50s, or maybe your 60s. And that ultimately, your eyeballs are going to bleed. I have a friend who gets shots in his eyes every month because that's what he has to do because of the bleeding in his eyeballs because of cardiovascular disease. And I think people don't know about it. It's funny how we know about everything else in the world, and we don't know about how bad everything is for us. And I think there's a political part of this, right? There's food companies, there's drug companies, there's a lot of competing interests. But ultimately, I think, you know, when a doctor comes on a program here like you are, and I'm grateful that you're here, I want every doctor anywhere to be as plain spoken as they can be, because I think people need to hear the message that if you're not healthy, you're going to die. And I think that gets overshadowed by, you know, don't say they're fat, don't say they're this, don't say they're, no, you're fat and you're not well. And in so many situations, we see fat people, obese people, morbidly obese people, and the reason they're fat is because they've had either some major trauma and they're eating their feelings, so to speak, or they have a very serious problem with food. So I want to get your reaction to that when we come back. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back with Dr. Fahmi Farah.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
So we're afraid to tell people that they're morbidly obese. We're afraid to say that fat kills and fat is bad. Dr. Fahmi Farah is our Fahmi Farah, is our guest. Doc, what say you?
I am going to be very direct that, you know, obesity is one of the major risk factors for cardiovascular disease. It increases your risk of heart attack and stroke, and as a result, it decreases your survival rate. So I believe that as a society, we need to get away from the culture of body shaming and stereotyping that are associated with obesity and become real and have real conversations and educate our public on how to reduce obesity and get down to the bottom of why is there such an epidemic of obesity here in the United States. What is the food relationship? You know, what kind of foods are we consuming? That's one. But also, like, getting into other things, like is there mental health issues involved? A lot of times obesity can have mental health along with it, like you know, depression and things like that. So I think we need to work together to reduce obesity.
Dr. Fahmi Farah, you are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. Thank you for being with us. I appreciate it. Thank you. You bet. Folks, we're coming right back with Open Phone America, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't move a muscle. Live
from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And our phone number, if you want to join us, hour number 3 here, it's 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And a few things we've been discussing tonight. We've talked about the price of the U.S. dollar, the value of the U.S. dollar. We've talked about whether it should be backed by gold or not, whether that happens again. We've got some mixed reviews on that. We've also discussed what went on in the Georgia Court of Appeals with Fahmi Willis and the move to disqualify her, and that the Court of Appeals is actually hearing the arguments from the Trump team, which doesn't look good for Fahmi Willis. It would be nice if that could happen in New York, right, where they could maybe get Trump out of the courtroom with Judge Juan Merchan, who seems to be having a field day with Trump. And yesterday, Stormy Daniels took the stand. And, you know, we talked about that yesterday and how, and even Trump made comments about that yesterday, saying he felt like their entire case was falling apart. But it wasn't just Trump that felt that way. Some of the left within the media felt that way as well. And I thought that was really interesting because you've got people from CNN that are just, you know, against Trump, and they had no choice but to kind of call it the way it was. And somebody from MSNBC, Jen Psaki, was on The Morning Joke yesterday, and she said that some Republicans are supporting Trump because maybe he will die. Where'd that come from? I think that's just kind of crazy. Listen to this.
Why? We know why Senator Tim Scott is embarrassing himself on TV every day. He wants to be vice president. We know. But to your point about Mitch McConnell or Bill Barr or any of these people, why? Is it just to be close to power? They believe Donald Trump's going to get reelected? What is it?
I think there's two categories. I mean, there's obviously the Tim Scott category, as you said. That's embarrassing to watch, cringy. I've watched it many times. I think many of them want to be close to power. They also assume or have this thought in their mind that maybe Donald Trump will go away. Maybe he'll go to jail. Maybe he will die, not to be too morbid, but maybe, I mean, he's not a young man. Who knows what's in their minds? They think maybe I will be behind the Oval Office. Maybe I will be in the Oval Office.
Jen Psaki, silent P, of course. Shame on you. Come on. If that's true for Trump, how true is it for Biden? Can we make that argument for you, for Karine Jean-Pierre, for every last person that's in the White House, for Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States? Now, Kamala Harris, I think we have a song that we made for her. If you find it, let me know. And I would venture to say Joe Biden's the one that's got one foot in the grave. He can barely walk up a flight of stairs, or I should say he can barely fall up a flight of stairs. So to say that about Trump, I think is really just, it's an unfair characterization, and it opens up your guy to really having people say it seems like they're just waiting for him to die. I think that was a bad move. It was a miscalculation. Do we have the Kamala song? And I also want to you to hear Abby Phillip. She's a host on CNN, and she says that Stormy Daniels seems to have a personal vendetta against Trump. I think I would agree with that, which is why she's been so disingenuous, I think, through this process. Listen to this.
However, I do think Stormy Daniels, the way that she conveyed that, you know, Trump is going to make the argument, and I don't know what his lawyers are going to do, but he's already been making the case. This is a concocted case to dirty him up before the election, to make him seem bad in front of the American public, even though there's no like legally illegal thing that happened here. That's his argument. I don't know that Stormy Daniels helped the prosecutors in batting that down because she seemed to have a personal vendetta against him. It may be justified, but that's what it seemed like.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like. I think this is the general consensus of everybody who was reacting to yesterday's testimony, is that this woman helped Trump. She helped Trump. She tried to sink him, and she helped him. And Eli Honig, who is a legal analyst at CNN, he also said yesterday that the Stormy Daniels cross-examination was a disaster. Listen to this.
But the cross-exam, boy, her responses were disastrous. I mean, do you hate Donald Trump? Yes, of course she does. That's a big deal. When the witness hates the person whose liberty is at stake, that's a big damn deal. And she's putting out tweets, fantasizing about him being in jail. That really undermines the credibility. The fact that she owes him $500,000, she, by order of a court, owes Donald Trump $500,000 and said, I will never pay him. I will defy a court order. The defense is going to say she's willing to defy a court order. Why? She's not willing to respect an order of a judge. Why is she going to respect this oath she took? So I thought it went quite poorly on cross-exam. At the end of direct, I thought, okay, they got what they needed, but I think the cross is making real inroads.
Yeah. This is a guy who's there to say Trump is bad, right? So that's how bad this thing went yesterday. And I've got to agree. And this has been the criticism all along. The credibility of Michael Cohen, the guy who was hired and on staff to protect his client, Donald Trump, the credibility and turns against him and then gets caught lying, and he's now a convicted perjurer. The credibility of a woman who is a porn star, Stormy Daniels. And I want to be frank here. I don't care if she made millions as a porn star. I don't know personally any porn stars. I don't necessarily think that if I had a porn star as a guest that I would be rude to them. But I don't think it comes with a ton of credibility, right? I'm not trying to put down the profession, and I'm willing to interview someone that is noteworthy. But I'm just saying, I think by and large, the general public, if you say, what does this person do for a living? They have sex on tape and they act. I guess there's a degree of acting in there. They are actors in this adult film industry that people are going to be overly impressed, unless they're fans, right? But outside of that, I don't think people are going to say, oh, wow, well, yeah, it's really hard. What you do is really, I'm a real big fan of your work. I just don't see that happening and being the case. So the fact that there was so much stock put in this woman's testimony to begin with, I think is crazy. The fact that she says she hates the guy, and it was not $500,000, $700,000 that she owes him. And yes, she did say she'd never pay him back. So, and we talked about that last night a little bit. Definitely a bad move, I think, for Stormy Daniels, and point to the Trump team. So I think the Trump legal team is doing a good job, and not so much that they're doing a good job. I don't mean to discredit them in any way. I think they're doing an excellent job. But they're doing an effective job at pointing out the obvious, right, and in making the case for the truth. And I think that's really what it is that the truth makes sense. And when they do a good job making their case, it allows the truth to be showcased. And it's when that truth gets showcased that people see it and say, huh, yeah, you know what, that makes sense. Even people like Eli Honig and Abby Phillip have nothing to say except this didn't go well. Anyway, your calls and more on this and everything else that we're talking about when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue with your phone calls and more on all the topics we're discussing, whether it's the obesity epidemic, the cardiovascular disease that we discussed with Dr. Fahmi Farah, the strength of the U.S. dollar, will it become gold-backed currency once again or not? And, of course, all of the legal issues regarding Donald Trump, the incarceration and charge of Mr. Ibarra, who's charged with the murder of Laken Riley. And really just a lot of topics that we covered tonight. So let's hit the phones. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. We've got calls from Chicago, Illinois, Oregon, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Montana, Boise, Idaho. We're going to start with whoever's been on hold the longest. Let's go to Michael, Pendleton, Oregon, KUMA. Michael, go right ahead.
Hey, Rich. Great talking to you again.
Thank you.
First, I want to lead off, Rich, with a belated happy birthday. I hope you had a great birthday.
Thank you.
Yes, and on Cinco de Mayo of all days. Yes, that's
so
really
cool.
interesting.
Let me tell you, that's been so fun for me my whole life. Ever since I've become like an adult. Everywhere you go, there's a party that day, and it really is fun. So thank you, and I had a blast.
Oh, that's great, Rich. I also want to say, I consider you a friend also, and I'm very happy for your weight loss. I've been diabetic 25 years, and I read that most diabetics die from something related to cardiovascular disease, something related to that. It could be a stroke, it could be heart attack, things like that. And I thought it was so great. The guest you had the doctor there going over that. And I'm concerned, for my fellow Americans, I see so many people, Rich, overweight in the stores. Some of them are my friends, and like I said, I've lost about 20 pounds, and I try to get in or do some walking every day after work, and I feel so much better after that exercise.
Outstanding. Well, and that was what the doctor told me at first, that I had to go and do 30 minutes of walking per day. And I was very leisurely in my stroll. I mean, in addition to, at the time, I worked in a radio studio in Manhattan, and I remember, you're running up and down the stairs because you really can't walk slow in Manhattan. During rush hour, you'll get trampled on the subway if you're not moving fast enough. So, there was a lot of that. And I would, take my stroll occasionally, not every day, but occasionally, probably two to three times a week. And I remember going back to the doctor and losing some weight, and him saying, "How's the walking going?" I'd say, "I go sometimes." He was like, "All right, now you have to officially go to the gym. You have to go to the gym. You've got to do at least 3 days a week, and well beyond walking. You need to do like a light jog. You've got to start breaking a sweat here. I need 30 minutes of serious sweat, heart rate up, all that." And I was like, "Oh man, that's not what I signed up for." But that was exactly what the doctor ordered. So, but it took time to get there. After about 2 or 3 years of actually doing the keto diet and losing weight that way, it was a long process, and it's a process I'm still involved in. But thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. And you're right. You're 100% right, my friend. The fellow Americans that are out there, your friends, my friends, our family together, right? This is... that's why I decided to do this. I wanted to talk about this because I think it's whenever we have a chance to let people know about what's going on, we got to let them know. And cardiovascular disease is not exclusive to fat people or diabetics. There's a lot of skinny guys that get cardiovascular disease because they have that super fast metabolism. And they're like, "Oh, I can eat anything and I burn it right off." That's true. But it doesn't mean it doesn't clog your pump and clog your arteries and cause, atherosclerosis and all these other things that create blockages. That's a thing, and that's a killer, as is high blood pressure. There's a lot of things you got to watch out for. So I think it's super important for us to make sure that our heart health and our cardiovascular health is on point. And this is a new thing for me, right? At first, I was like, I didn't want to get yelled at the doctor. Then I didn't want to be as fat as I was. Then I started to like the way clothes started to fit off the rack. It was a lot easier than getting everything tailored because I was all these different sizes. You know, I had a size 18.5 neck, but I was only 5'8", 5'7.5", and 269 pounds. Really big dude, and not really tall dude, but very wide dude. And, little by little, I went from being an extra large or double extra large to a large. And I think I fit into a medium now pretty safely. But if I eat too much, there goes the buttons on that medium. So, I'm still in that in-between stage where I probably need to lose another 20 pounds. But I agree with you, your sentiments about we should be alarmed and we have to take better care of ourselves. And it's shocking to me that the stuff that I learn and the stuff that some of our guests tell us is not commonplace, that it's not common knowledge, and that everybody doesn't know about this stuff. They should. And whatever opportunity we have to shed some light on it, we should do that as well. Michael in Pendleton, Oregon, thank you for the call, my friend. I appreciate your well wishes and your kind words. KUMA in the building. Let us continue. Let's go to Montana, Evergreen, Montana, KOFI, and check in with our buddy Frank. Frank, go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. Hey, I went on a 7-mile walk the other day last Friday, and 7 miles uphill, and I broke into that sweat, and you just have to keep moving, and just it really pays off. I have more awareness and my surroundings, and I just
it's great for your brain too, I hear.
Oh, totally. Yes, and I'm better focused, and my memory's coming a lot back, and I'm looking at the problem of obesity is, but last 3 years we've gone through this COVID kind of a national prison where we stay in home and just watch TV. And if you watch TV for more than an hour, you're going into anxiety, and it's not healthy to sit for an hour. And it's a national disgrace to have to watch television. It really is. I mean, but there's more to see on TV, but we're all addicted to it, and it's causing problems for young kids and having early heart problems, etc.
I agree. I think you're spot on there, Frank. Go ahead.
And I grew up before TV was really around, and it was a different world back then.
So it was radio and outside and playing.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, what a great life.
It was a better world. It really was. Anyway.
I don't doubt that for anything. I grew up pretty poor, so we only had one TV. And my dad had, like I said, we had one color TV in our living room, and nobody was allowed to, change the channel from what my mom was watching. And my dad had, a broken down, very tiny black and white TV that rarely worked in his little area. And that was it. Those were the only TVs, and most of them were off most of the time because my mom liked listening to music. So that was, young Brooklyn me. Once we got to Jersey, we had a TV, color TV, remote control, everything. And then, the couch potato begins. But you're right. You have to create these habits for yourself where you go out for walks and whatnot. And I'm not always looking to do that, right? But definitely something I need to do, and I think we all do. Folks, we're coming right back. Your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
Valdez. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
It's a little bit like back in the 1840s in the Great Exodus from Ireland because of the famine and the way Irish Catholics are treated. We said, no, we don't need any more of those folks. And there's a large influx. There's even a bigger influx now in terms of Hispanic voters, Hispanic Hispanic citizens who want to become citizens. So it's just enormously important.
That is Joe El Baboso Biden, the president of the United States, saying Hispanic voters, Hispanic citizens, those that want to become citizens. He's talking about illegal immigrants that he's calling Hispanic voters. That is alarming. He said that on he did a radio interview. He sounded like he was half asleep. No wonder President Trump calls him Sleepy Joe, Sleepy Joe. What a great and fitting name for Joe El Baboso Biden. But I think it's just, letting the cat out of the bag, right? Freudian slip, as they say. When you say, Hispanic voters. No, they're not Hispanic voters. I'm a Hispanic voter, if you will, right? I'm allowed to vote. Somebody that just got here that doesn't even have a driver's license, and that's why they're always making that push for driver's licenses, is because that ultimately allows you to get registered and then become a voter. But absolute crazy time, I got to tell you. Hispanic voters, Hispanic citizens, those that want to become, he had to keep correcting himself because he didn't know what he was talking about. And it's alarming to think that the president thinks of immigrants in this country, in any country, any person that is in charge of anything. You should know what an immigrant is and not call them a Hispanic voter or a Hispanic citizen. To me, that's not one and the same. Anyway, we go back to your calls. Let us see. Where do we go here? We've got Bill, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, KDKA. Very quickly, go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. How are you, man? Hey,
wonderful. Thank
you. Hey, I got like 15 grandkids, right? I'm an old man. But anyways, I'm not as old as you think, but I'm old. Hey, but anyways, I was going to talk to you about something else, but then, the weight thing, come on. I went to one of my little granddaughter's softball games last week. They're 5 to 8, right? The ages of 5 to 8.
Okay.
My granddaughter's 6, so she's right, she's 6, so she's right in there, somewhere. You know what, Rich? I'm telling you what, I'm sitting there, me and my wife went, my wife and I went to go see, a game. I seen the other team, right? Rich, I have no lie to you. There had to be 5 to 6 girls on this other team that, oh my God, they were huge. And I told my wife, I said, watch out, they're going to get killed, right? And I mean 150 pounds. Man, I don't know. I wasn't looking at the girls. I'm just, watching them run, and it was like, holy crap. I can't believe how big these kids were. They were, actually, our girls actually won. Our thin little girls that you couldn't tell.
Wow! So they won. That's what it's all about. I think at the end of the day, Bill, you want your team to win, and I got to say congratulations to your granddaughter's team because ultimately that's why we go to these games, right? We want to see our kids do well. We want to see them succeed, and who doesn't love it when that happens, right? I know I do. Anyway, Bill, thanks for the call from America's oldest radio station, by the way, KDKA. I want to continue. Let us move on to, where do we go from here? David, San Francisco, California, one of our favorite callers that loves to disagree. Let's go to David, who's listening online at richvaldez.com. David, go right ahead.
Well, thanks, Rich. I got to disagree with you about the voting immigrants being able to vote. America was founded on taxation with representation. And when you imagine that people are begging to be able to vote when they escape a kingdom, when they escape a dictatorship, and we give them the ability to vote, but your illusions and Trump's illusions and the MAGA crowd illusions that they're all going to vote for some, as if they're going to vote for Biden, in San Francisco, we allow immigrants to vote if their kids are in the school district. We allow them to vote in the school district races. They can't vote for federal races and they can't vote for state races, but they can vote for local races. And so the idea of bait and switch, that the MAGA crowd are bait and switching America. They're tricking people into thinking that we're the land of the free and the home of the brave. But when you get here, you better bow and scrape in order to get the basic taxation with representation.
Do you think it's bowing and scraping, or do you think it's, I don't know, the 14th Amendment, the actual, just the rule of law, where you apply to become a resident, you take a citizenship exam, you become a citizen, and then you're eligible to vote, right? I think it's just a due process thing. It's the law, right? It's not bowing and scraping. I would hope, right? My biggest concern with anybody that's visiting America, and I say visiting because I know plenty of immigrants, and many of them, even those that have become citizens, many of them don't want to stay in the United States because they love their homeland. And they want to work here, make money, the almighty dollar, the non-gold-backed dollar, and they make that money and they send it back home and they build themselves a beautiful home wherever they live, and they build their mom a home and they do very well. And they work hard here. And then they go back and they live like a king. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you do that and you don't want to be a part of this country and you don't care to become a citizen, but you're part of a larger political system that is going to be counting on a vote, that's important. Now, today we saw that the House passed a bill to exclude illegal immigrants from the census. That's good, right? Because we don't have a way of proving that they're paying taxes because they don't have a work permit. So the idea that because they go to the store and they buy milk that they're paying sales tax is not, in my opinion, sufficient to say that this is tax, right? I think in reality you have to own a home. You got to pay some school tax to the county. You have to rent an apartment so that you're contributing to that tax base. You've got to really be a contributing member of society that we know of. And if we don't know you, we can't count you. And that's what I think this is all about. It's about knowing people. And that's why we want to exclude illegal immigrants from the census, because we don't know them. They haven't been vetted. We don't know what's going on. And I think that's the issue here. So it's not about bowing and scraping in so much as it is just doing the right thing and making sure that we know who's who and what's what and how we're helping these people. And that's it. It's never been legal for non-citizens to vote, right? So if you're on vacation, I was in Hungary recently. Had there been an election in Hungary, in Budapest, and I decided, well, I'm here, and I've been contributing to your tax base all week long that I was here. I've been paying this and paying that, and I've been buying in the restaurants, and guess what? I've taken a cab everywhere I've gone. I'm contributing to your economy, and I demand to vote in your school board race. I demand to vote in your state race. I demand to vote in your presidential race. That's crazy. Now, you also made the point that you think that the MAGA crowd is somehow inaccurate in saying that their belief or their illusion, as you said, is that illegal immigrants are going to vote. Why wouldn't we have that thought? Right? Just put the shoe on the other foot. Is it safe to assume that of 8 to 10 million people that are in this country now, that they're just going to want to not have the political power of having a vote? Of having a voice? Why on earth would they not want to vote? Especially if you're in a state where the rules are weak, like Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania is now saying, you know, as soon as you can get a license, we will automatically register you to vote. I just renewed my New Jersey driver's license, and I had to opt out of something that would put on my license that I'm a registered voter. All I had to do was click a little check mark in a box. So now you tell me, is that the way we should do things? Of course not. So ultimately, this is not about making people beg and scrape. This is about doing things the right way, following the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, and respecting the citizens and those that have come before them as immigrants who had to wait online and have a process to gain residency and citizenship into this country. David in San Francisco, I thank you for your call. Folks, we're coming right back. The rest of your calls and more straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
You know, every now and again, I'll look at social media and I will get criticized by people saying, oh, you need to talk a lot less and take more calls. And while I realize, look, I can't accommodate that. I think I take more calls than anybody in talk radio. And I listen to a fair amount of talk radio. I think we probably do anywhere between 10 and 15 calls an hour at times. Not every time, but at times. And, or I should say per show. And that's a lot. It's a lot of calls. And I try my best to get as many calls as I can. But then I leave things on the table, like things that I want to talk about. Like last night, huge story, and I didn't get to it. And part of my job is to make sure that I'm giving you the scoop before you get it tomorrow, right, on the other shows. And one of the stories last night, it's still a big story today. I see it all over the place. The Boy Scouts of America has changed their name. This is huge, right? I think this is a huge story because, goodness, I mean, this thing is as old as apple pie, yet here we are with the Boy Scouts changing their name. So just bear with me. I want to share this with you. The Boy Scouts of America, BSA, will change their name to Scouting America next year to reflect their pledge to inclusion. That's a shame. The new name goes into effect on February 8th, 2025, at the 115th anniversary of the Boy Scouts of America, or now Scouting America, right? So Scouting America. Unbelievable. Though our name will be new, our mission remains unchanged. We are committed to teaching young people to be prepared for life. And that's Roger Crone, President, CEO of Scouting America, in a statement. This will be a simple but very important evolution as we seek to ensure that everyone feels welcome in Scouting. Now, I want to just say this, just for the sake of saying it, because my daughters were Girl Scouts, my brothers were Boy Scouts. I think I was a Cub Scout for like 5 minutes. And I can tell you this. That's why we have Boy Scouts. That's why we have Girl Scouts. Not so that we could call it Scouting America. This is obscene, in my opinion. Obscene. Now people go, oh, Rich, come on. It's not obscene. You disagree with it. But no, it's obscene. We are literally erasing, forget blurring the line, erasing the line of what makes society society. The men's room and the women's room. Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. Ladies and gentlemen. How on earth can we have chivalry? How on earth can women be their best if there's not a man that's helping them be their best? How can a man be his best if there's not a good woman behind him? When all of a sudden now we're just going to pick and choose. This is insanity. This is an attack on our children. It must end. That's all I can say. And I hope somebody out there agrees with me and tries to make it end. Anyway, lots of calls, a little bit of time. Let's do the speed round. Where do we go? We go to Sarah, Bedford, Indiana, WBIW. Go right ahead.
Hey, congratulations on losing weight and happy birthday real quick.
Thank you.
It does bother me that a lot of education experts, in order to get kids behaving in school, they give them water bottles when they're in elementary. They let them snack. It's even up in the middle school they let them snack. And I think, how are those kids supposed to ever be able to control their weight, especially if they're like me and have bad metabolism, if every time they're under stress, or the way to behave is just sit there and eat or suck on a water bottle? Bad habits, oral fixation, they're going to have problems later in life. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome, Sarah. And all I'll say is I think water is probably a really good habit, but I get what you're saying. If you're constantly turning to putting something in your mouth to pacify yourself, not a good move, right? You should break that pacifier addiction in infancy. But I do think kids need to drink more water. All good points, though. Thank you for that. Let's continue. Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ. Very quickly. Paul, go right ahead.
Good evening, Rich. Yes, I was a country Boy Scout. Never went to the official Boy Scouts, but I was a country Boy Scout. I learned how to do things in the paths, in the woods, and so forth like that. And I think it's not a good idea to, when you intermingle the girls with the boys, let the boys do their things, the girls get their things, grow up and mature. But what I wanted to say real quick was that, with Stormy Daniels, my dad had a saying. He used to say that if he had a very disdain, he had a disdain for prostitution, so forth, things like that. And he would say, well, if she had as many sticking out her as she's had stuck in her, she'd look like a porcupine. Now, this is the case with Stormy Daniels. Okay. Now, this woman has been with, I don't know, maybe 2,000 men or whatever. How can you believe a woman like that? Now, I'm not going to put down no strippers or anybody that's making a living doing what they do. But for this to come back after 18 years, she already admitted that it didn't happen, right?
Right.
And shouldn't there be like the statute of limitation? Why do I, as an American citizen, have to see a former president and a president attack like this on these phony-ass trials that they're having on Donald Trump?
Yeah, listen, I'm with you. I think you said it better than I tried to say it earlier. This isn't really about maligning her because she's an adult film star. This is about the idea that we're going to try and value an adult film star as some sort of key witness when we're going against someone who legitimately won the presidency of the United States, maybe even twice. And it's insane to me that we entertain this and it's all over the media. But kudos to our left-wing friends in the media to say that it was a disaster, because the reality is it was a disaster for them. And I think Trump was right when he said that the case was falling apart. Paul in Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ, thank you so much for your call. We come back for the final round of the speed round. Straight ahead, don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So AstraZeneca has now removed their vaccine from the entire global marketplace. Let's wrap up this speed round here with Gregory, South Lake, Texas, KLIF. Go right ahead, sir.
Hey, Rich, how you doing?
Wonderful, thank you.
I have to say, I'm glad to hear it. The woman that you had on, I don't know if she was a doctor or what. I tuned in late to the show, but you rightly brought up the vaccine question with all this heart disease. And frankly, I would say, with respect, she was dissembling. There's a person you should get on as a guest. His name is Edward Dowd. He's a former financial analyst who's been working with two other PhD mathematicians. And they have an outfit called financetechnologies.com. It's finance instead of with an F, it's PH. Okay.
All right. Well, we'll check it out. I don't have time to do plugs right now. It's a speed round, but we'll definitely check it out. Gregory in South Lake, Texas, thank you for your call. KLIF in the building. Let us continue very quickly to Linda, Albany, New York, with seconds to go on the clock. Go right ahead.
Happy birthday. People need to remember that people who come legally, they also sign papers that they will help to defend this country should, if we're in a big war or something, right? As opposed to those who just come illegally.
Yeah, and you know what? Another thing that everybody that I've ever spoken to that had family came from Italy or came from anywhere, they would tell me, when my grandparents came here, they had to have a sponsor. Somebody had to say, look, they're not going to go on the dole. There was a public charge rule, and it said you can't go on welfare. Someone here has to support you, and you got to get a job. And that's just not the case anymore. Linda in Albany, New York, WDGJ, thank you for your call. Diane in Chicago, WGN, big shout out to you. Paul in Boise, KBOI. Folks, good night. God bless. I am Rich Valdez. We'll do it again tomorrow. Hasta la próxima.